We've been talking quite a bit about financial policies in your office and agreements between you and the patient. One of the key things that we talked about a few weeks ago is just kind of all of the provisions in a financial policy that you want to have. And we last time we talked about insurance and those types of provisions that you have in your policy. This week we're going to talk about the patient's portion. And really this is important to nail because you want to make sure that you cover all of these facets correctly. Now, the other big thing in this, and I don't think I've mentioned it in the previous ones, is that you want to make sure that the patient signs the agreement. That makes everything considerably easier, especially if the patient were to come back and say, why did I get charged for this? Why did you charge me interest here? Or why did this happen? You can say, because that's our financial policy and you agreed to that up front. We're very transparent, and you can actually give them a copy of the financial policy that they've already signed, and that way they have it and they can actually solve any of the questions that they may have. So that's important. Make sure that you get the patient's signature. Now, right out of the gate, as far as the patient's responsibility for everything, we still talk about insurance. So the key is this, is you want to make sure you have some check boxes on there for the patient to give you kind of that initial indication. Do they not have insurance? Do they have insurance and for some reason want to bill it themselves? Or lastly, do they have insurance and they want you to bill for that? And then inside of each one of those, of course, there's payment responsibilities by the patient. When is that patient payment due? So if they have no insurance, when do you expect payment? That should be in your financial policy attached to that first checkbox, right? The second one, they've got insurance, but they want to file that. Now, you and I both know, probably never going to happen or doesn't happen very often, but every once in a while it may. So you want to make sure you give them that option. And so if that's the case, then when is that payment due? You're going to collect it at the time of service? Do you expect it paid within 30 days? What is your inter-office policy? You make that determination. Make sure that it's included in that particular financial policy. And last, of course, insurance. When is their deductible and co-payment and co-insurance? All of those. When are those payments due? And you want to include that in the financial policy on that checkbox. So when they check that box or initial that box or whatever you have them do, that it's very clear what their responsibility inside of that as well is. Now, the other is this, assignment of benefits. Now, again, we're still in the insurance realm, but this is still really targeted towards the payment coming from the patient. You want to make sure that you have them sign an assignment of benefits. Now, the question is, where do you put that? You could potentially include that inside your financial policy that the patient's going to sign. When we talked at the beginning of this video, you want to make sure that the patient signs it and dates it and makes it very clear, right? So you could include the assignment of benefits right inside your financial policy, or you could reference it inside your financial policy and indicate that it is a part of the agreement and have them sign something separate. Entirely up to you. That's a business decision. So what else? What other types of payments do you accept? Are you going to accept cash, credit card, checks? Do you have an ACH capability? Is that a possibility? Probably not very often, but it could be. And then if a check bounces, what is your NSF check fee that you're going to charge? All of that should be included in your financial policy. So what else needs to be in there? This is really important. Interest. If you don't include a statement about interest, the very most that you can collect without having an agreement in writing is 5%. That's it, 5% per year. That's the maximum you can collect. Even with an agreement in healthcare in Illinois, the maximum that you can charge is 9%. So if you include interest, you can actually charge up to 9% interest on unpaid bills. Now, when does that start? Well, you're going to identify that in your financial policy. When does the interest begin to tick away? Are you giving them 30 days to pay, 2 weeks to pay? How much time are you giving them to pay? Then, when are you going to turn their bill over to collections? Are you going to turn it over to collections? That's really important to put in there. After X period of an unpaid bill, we will turn your bill over to collections. And then who is responsible for those collection fees? Make sure you include all of that language in your financial policy so that it's abundantly clear. The patient signs it. Now you have this firm agreement with the patient. Now, also, you want to make sure that you include in there that your interest payments apply to all payments, whether all settings. So if it's a standard health insurance claim, if it's a personal injury claim or work comp claim, you want to make sure that whatever interest policy you have in place, that you make a statement that it applies to all of those, including PI, work comp, and standard health insurance, or just simply cash pay. So all of those things come into play. make sure that you cover that as well. A couple of other things that are really, really important. You may want to acknowledge that you understand that from time to time that there may be some temporary financial challenges that come into play, and that if they need to have a conversation about payment of their bill, that they can contact your office for potential payment arrangements. That's if you want to. So that's a provision that you may want to consider. Lastly, for the patient responsibility portion of everything, you want to make sure that you include something that indicates that the person, the adult who is receiving the services, or the parent who is accompanying the child, or who signs that consent to care for a minor, that they are responsible for the bill. That if there's a divorce situation, another legal issue, that is not your purview. You're not there to handle their legal challenges. Instead, they are actually responsible for paying that bill if they are there and receiving the services. That's who's responsible. So you want to make sure that that's abundantly clear, that it's not your job to navigate those legal waters that may come up from time to time, but instead it's their responsibility to navigate them and to pay you. And not necessarily in that order. Those are the key provisions you want to make sure are covered for a patient, and we'll catch you next week.